Information Office. So we will be having our first panel discussion on meter reading and billing concerns to be discussed by Mr. Fletcher Louis Lantape, the Consumer Accounts Division Chief. Help me welcome.
Mike Tess. Good morning sa tanan. Alright, so in behalf of my FSD manager, Ms. Alejandra B. Rosario, I'd like to present to you pinaka-sikat nga issue karong panahon na, labi na sa mga member consumer owners. So I'll be discussing meter reading and billing concerns. By the way, I am from the Finance Services Department. All meter reading, billing, collection, and disconnection concerns are handled by our department. So for now, I'll be presenting to you some highlights, reasons behind those questions sa inyong mga kasilinganan, sa inyong mga parents. So for now, we will discuss. Please, next slide, please. All right. So basically, why is my electricity bill excessively high during this period? So kinsa ba sa inyo nakadungog ani sa inyong mama or sa inyong papa nga nagreklamo nganong dako kay among bill karong panahon na? Can I see a hand? Honest daw o tanan gani no. So pag uli ninyo karon kani dayon ang isagpa, di ba taw? Kani dayon ang i-share sa inyong parents. So ngano man nga taas ang atong bill karong panahon na, no? Maski gani ako nireklamo po ko kay taas ang akong bill. Alright, so our topic will be answering this question, no? So makita na to karon unsay mga reasons nganong taas ang atong bill during this period. And is this true to all? Kita ba gyud tanan nakasinati ani. So on the next slide, I'll be showing you the fundamentals. Unsay rules, section 3.5, which says that each bill for service issued by the BU shall be based on the reading of the kilowatt-hour meter for each account of the customer and any applicable monthly charges. So, klaro kayo si Visor. Si Visor ang atong tagdanan, atong libro on how to serve our member consumer owners. And specifically, on that section, Raymond, the distribution utility sabi sa Visor can only be a consumer by way of that instrument. Ginatawag nato siya ng instrument na electric kilowatt-hour meter. So later na i-discuss sa meter, no? So basically, ang atong ginabill sa atong consumer kay register siya by way of that instrument. Next. So unsa man ning kilowatt-hour meter? So a kilowatt-hour meter or an energy meter is a device that measures the amount of electricity energy consumed by a residence, business, or an electrically powered device. So klaro kaayo no? Kani siya nga instrument is specifically gibutang sa mga premises sa atong mga member consumers owners because mao ni ang mo register sa konsumo nga atong gigamit for that specific billing period. So makita nato in all houses nga naay kuryente, in all establishments, naagi ni siya always at tubangan. Because again, gaingon si Disor, nga dili mi pwede mo bill not unless naay metro nga gibutang. Because that metro will register your actual consumption as a consumer. Alright, so gusto po nato ipaabot sa inyo na unsa dining metro ha? Sabi sige ra siya gatuyok. Mostly ako madunggan no katong sa karaan because we have different types of meter. But what we usually use now is the electronic type of meter which naa siya LCD display. But before or although naapaghapon karon natay mga metro nga electronic electromechanical and naputay mechanical katong ginaingon nila nga motuyok. So mo na usually before nga makadungog ta ang ilang metro kusog kay motuyok. So that is a mechanical kilowatt hour meter. But what we are usually using now is this electronic kilowatt hour meter. So kabalo ta nga nay metro pero wala ta kabalo giunsa sa metro pagrehistro. Unsay karakteristik sa metro para mo rehisto siya sa ato ang ginakonsumo sa isa ka bulan. So again, I am showing you, this is an electronic kilowatt hour meter. So in the kilowatt hour meter, previous slide please. So there is a label or description at the top. As you could see, kanina nakalingin dira sa ibabaw na nakabutang 1,600 IMP, which means impulse, per kilowatt hour. And then at the middle, there is also naka-circle in red. At you could also see naka-label siyang impulse, then the color of the LED light is red. So what does it mean? Kita mismo, as member consumer owner, pwede ta nga, kung wata gibuhat sa itong kinabuhi, pwede ta mag-atang sa metro. Atong i-validate kung tama ba ganyan gibuhat. Because the meter will actually flash or make impulse 1,600 times before it can register 1 kilowatt hour. So kung makita ninyo na sa inyong balay, pagpasiga mo pusuga, magpa-under mo appliances, mag-blink ganitong red, so that means gasugod na siya register. However, dili niya ma-register ang 1 kilowatt hour unless nakahuman siya og 1,600 flashes or impulse. So, dili kita kaingon no nga kusog kay mo dagan because in fact makita gyud nato sa balay nga dili gyud kusog ang blinking sa red light. So, although nagadepende na siya sa atong load, but generally walay metro nga gibuhat nga i-expound niya or padakuon niya inyong konsumo. Because all our kilowatt hour meters are verified, checked, and tested by the Energy Regulatory Commission. And kung makita ninyo, nanay mga silyo, nanay mga stickers, which means it has passed the accuracy test of ERC. So muna, nga importante, may bawa na ito nga, ay, unani din siya, kailangan pa din siya og 1,600 impulse before it can register 1 kilowatt hour. So asa man itong 1 kilowatt hour nga itong giingon, dito siya mo register sa LCD. So say for example, ang number niya karon is 100, kailangan mo blink siya og 1,600 times para mahimo siyang 101. So, ihunaan na ang basic characteristic of a kilowatt hour meter. So, how do we get the kilowatt hour consumption? Because actually what we see in the meter is the registration, but not your kilowatt hour consumption for the month. So, klarohon na ito kay namagoy uban mo reklamo nga dako kaya mong konsumo niya, yung gibasa ang nasa metro. Pero actually, it's not. Because it is just the registration. To get the actual kilowatt hour consumption for the month, the formula says you have to deduct the present reading from the previous reading. So in this example, if we have a present reading of 2,444, pasabot aning present reading mo, ni katong ni display si LCD. I-deduct na to from the previous reading of 2,132. This is a given variable. So the actual kilowatt hour consumption is 312. So mali nga moingon ta nga kung konsumo karon is 2,444 kilowatt hour. That is wrong. Because again, that is only the registration of the meter. To get your consumption for the month, kailangan nato siyang i-deduct sa atong previous reading. So asa man nato ni makita usually? Of course, kung nisabay ta sa meter reading, maklaro nato, makita nato dito ang actual reading. Kung gustong wala ta nakasubay, we can also check our billings because our billings na nakabutang dito present reading and the previous reading. So always yun na siya ng duha ka variables to get the kilowatt hour consumption for the month. Alright. So karon nakuha na nato ang kilowatt hour consumption, giunsa man ni pagbill. So nakita na ko ang kamot sa mga nag-raise ganyan, no? So I think everybody of you have already seen our billing. So what I am showing you on the right side, on your left, is the old billing that we use. Although na sa Santa Cruz and part of Digos na agyapon ani, but the others are already receiving the tape receipt type billing. Although they look different, but the content and how they are being computed are the same. So, ato lang ipakita nga base sa atong kilowatt-hour consumption ganiha, giunsa man pag-compute sa Desoreco. So, as a matter of fact, daghan na siya og rates actually. But for purposes of kanang presentation sa atoa nga mga consumers, ato lang gipa simplify ang pag-present. However, in the actual computation, ang gitagod-tagod nato ng 9 pesos and 3,775 centavos into different rates, no? So makita nato na sa bill from generation, transmission, system loss, DSM, VAT, UC, FIT-all. So daghan kay charges ana. But for simplicity of presentation, I'll be showing you giunsa to pag-compute ganiha katong 312 na to ang consumption into an amount nga atong kailangan bayron for the month. So in this example, to get the total amount of bill, we need the kilowatt-hour consumption times the rate. So the rate per kilowatt-hour, and then we add the fixed charges and the VAT. Ang pasabot aning VAT katong sa distribution VAT lang a portion because it's 12% of our DSM charges. So, asa man nato ni makita ang rate? Sa Desoreco, always on a monthly basis, atong gina-post na monthly sa atong website. So, kung gusto ninyo nga ma-compute all by yourself or you wanted to help your neighbors, makita nato na dito sa website kung pila ang actual nga kilowatt-hour consumption, kilowatt-hour pesos per kilowatt-hour nga gipatuman anang specific nga bulan. So in this example, natay 312 kilowatt-hour nga consumption, i-multiply na to sa rate per kilowatt-hour of 9 pesos and 3,775 centavos, we get 2,900 plus. Plus the fixed charge, unsa man ning fixed charge, katuning metering charge. Nagyapon ni dito sa schedule of rates, 5 pesos na siya per month for a residential consumer. And then plus the VAT. So kaning VAT, actually, this is 12% of the DSM, Distribution, Supply, and Metering Charges, including Lifeline Charge, RFSC, and Senior Citizen Subsidy. Makita ninyo na sa bill, katong second nga subgroup, kwaon na itong 12% ato, mo ito'y giingon nga distribution VAT. So, mo na siya dira, 75.44. So, this rate is based on May 2020 na billing. So, kung nag-consume ta og 312 kilowatt-hour, the amount of our bill will be 3,006 pesos and 22 centavos. So based on this presentation, makita nato nga katong question nga kung taas atong billing, naaday duha ka factors nga atong i-consider. One is kilowatt-hour consumption. Second is the rate. Because ang rate manggod gavary na siya monthly. So there are several rate charges nga naa dito sa bill, and most of those charges are only pass-on or pass-through charges, wherein si Desoreco is just a collector. So munang gavary siya monthly because the charges of our supplier also varies monthly. Si RC gaingon na kung unsay gibill sa generation, kung unsay gibill sa transmission, maura pud to inyong i-bill sa consumer. Walang labis, walang kulang. So that is the reason why on a monthly basis change pod ang atong rate per kilowatt hour. But what is important is that on the part of Desoreco, katong mabalik sa Desoreco, katong amount or katong rate nga specific for the operation of Desoreco, which is the distribution, supply, and metering, since time immemorial, wala gina siya nausab. Wala siya na-increase, wala siya ni-baba. So, ang gavary lang, ang cause sa variation sa rate on a monthly basis is because ang katong mga charges from our suppliers and at the same time, sa mga ERC order, specifically on UC charges, universal charges, or the fit-all charges. So makita niyo na unya sa bill. Anyway, dili na to i-discuss ang rate karon, but we want to let you know nga mo na reason nganong ga-change monthly ang rate. So dili pagbuot sa Desoreco nga patasan because again, the component that causes the change in rate is or are pass-through charges. Kung unsay gibil sa ato sa atong power supplier, maura pud to ato ang tunga-tungaon para i-bill sa member consumers. Right, so ako lang i-highlight again that there are two components that affects your billing for a specific month. Number one is your kilowatt hour consumption. The second is rate per kilowatt hour. Thank you. So next, I'll be showing you a simple caricature in concept. Kay kasagaran man ko nagreklamo ang metro gapataka ra daw og register, gapataka ra og bill. When in fact, in concept, ang isa ka balay nga naay metro, dili gyud na siya mo register, dili gyud na mo flash ang red kung wala tay gigamit sulod sa balay. So, but it is a different case when, for example, we use light, we use appliances, automatically the kilowatt-hour meter will also register. Because again, that is the characteristic of the meter. That is the purpose of the meter, to register our actual consumption. So, ato makita diri nga presentation that whatever ni-register sa metro is actually because of what we use inside the house. So, lisod po kayong pasangin lang nato ang uban, when in fact, ang metro dito raman sa itong balay, di ba? So, we just wanted to highlight those because we receive complaints nga buot-buot ra daw ang metro. But in fact, wala gabot-buot sa metro because metro was installed specifically to your house. And whatever is registered on the meter is because of what you use inside the house. Kaya generally, the meter will not register anything kung wala po'y gigamit sulod sa balay. Right? So, I'd like to show you this important note. That consumption is directly related to your power bill. So, ganapasabot nga always kung dako ang ato ang bill, nagapasabot, dako ang atong gikonsumo. Kung gamay ang ato ang bill, gapasabot, gamay po na atong gikonsumo. So they are always related to one another. So therefore, kung gamay day ta, nag-save ta, anang bulana, malamang, dili gyud malamang, true to the fact, pag abot sa bill, gamay gyud inyong bill. Because again, they are related. Kung gidako na, kung wala ta nag-save, sige ta gamit og air conditioner, sige ta gamit og electric fan, pag abot sa panahon nga mag-bill si Dasureko, mo expect pod ta nga madako. Because again, relative gyud siya. Kung unsa nga atong gigamit, mao pod na ang i-bill ni Dasureko. Dili kay si Dasureko mo bill og dako, bahalag unsa inyong gigamit. No, it's not. Always gyud related. Kung unsa ang inyong gigamit nga nirehistro sa metro, amo gyud ang i-bill accordingly. Okay? Next slide please. So, I'd like to highlight kay equally represented man dito Darino from Davao del Sur and Davao Occidental. So, we are very well aware unsa nahitabo during March and April kung gani naka-experience ta og enhanced community quarantine and modified enhanced community quarantine. So, ang kasagaran manggong reklamo during this period nag-emanate actually tungod aning panghitabo sa COVID-19. So, dili siya kagustuhan sa Dasureko. Again, no one is prepared because of this pandemic. But what Dasureko did is to follow local policies, guidelines issued by the LGUs. So this is what happened. For the province of Davao del Sur, in March and April 2020, we did actual billing. So kung nagyo mo reklamo, anong taas akong bill, gani akong giingon ganiha nga since ang ato ang basis metro lang man. So kung dako ang imong billing, it's because mo to ang rehistro sa metro. Wala nagbuot-buot si Dasureko nga pataasan ako imong kuan kay gusto ko makakwarta. No, it's not. Because it is a violation in ERC. So ang gibasihan sa Dasureko, kung dako ang inyong bill, it's because mo to ang nakarehistro sa metro. So again, for Davao del Sur, we did actual billing in March and April. Muna kung makita po nato, based on statistics, medyo slightly lower ang complaints sa Davao del Sur as compared to Davao Occidental. Unsa day nahitabo sa Davao Occidental? We did estimated billing. So due to border restrictions both for Davao Occidental and Davao del Sur, due to SCQ caused by COVID-19 pandemic, our meter readers cannot conduct actual meter reading of consumers' kilowatt-hour consumption. So because of those LGU restrictions at the time or at the height of the community quarantine, we are compelled nga kuan kanang dili mi maka reading sa metro because again we want to comply with the local LGU guidelines, and the guidelines of the LGU says bawal maglihok-lihok ang mga tao sa palibot. So in the case of Davao Occidental, although we requested several times that we be granted special permit so we can conduct actual meter reading, unfortunately, we were not given the permit. So as a result, we did estimated billing. Pero ang question karon, unsay basis ninyo? Basi gabot-buot ra mo sa estimated billing. So I'll show you on the next slide what is the basis of the SORECO in issuing an estimated billing? So, actually, kani nga kasinatian, kani nga experience is not only true to the SORECO. True ni siya sa tanang 121 electric cooperatives and also the private DUs, including Meralco, Davao Light, VECO, among others. No? So, kani siya nga problema, dili lang problema ni SORECO, problema sa tanang utilities. So, muna si ERC being the national regulator of all distribution utilities, nagpagawa siya ng advisory. So, ERC issued advisory dated April 15, which says that the DSOR or Distribution Services and Open Access Rules on estimated billings may be applied by DU to its consumers for the safety of the meter readers and to comply with physical distancing directive for the containment of the COVID-19. So mo ni siya ang rason ngano nga nag-estimated billing ta sa Davao Occidental. So which districts are affected? Gikan, Santa Maria, Malita, Don Marcelino, and Jose Abad Santos, including Balut Island, na afektuhan sila. Because again, LGU restrictions prohibits us from reading the kilowatt-hour meters. Gani, may na lang kinapagawa si RCO guidelines on estimated billings. Unsaon man ni pag-compute ng estimated billing? Next slide, please. Now, there is this specific provision in DSOR which says that the method of calculating a bill based on estimated usage is the average usage of the consumer during the preceding 3 months. So, unsay pasabot, during March nga billing, ang atong gigamit nga average history or average consumption niya is December 2019, January 2020, and February 2020 because the guideline says 3 preceding months before atong actual month nga nag-estimated billing. So, karon makita nato nga si DASORECO wala nagbuot-buot. Wala siya nagbuot-buot on how to bill the consumer, wala siya nagbuot-buot on how to estimate. Because it is clearly written on section 3.5.4 of the SOR nga ang basis for estimated billing is your average consumption for the 3 preceding months. Okay? So I have here an example of an estimated billing. So in December na siya 100, January 90, and in February 95. So in the month of March, since estimated man siya, we get the average of the 3. That is why in March, ang atong gibill sa consumer is 95 kilowatt-hour. Kilowatt-hour ni siya ha, so ato ni siyang i-multiply sa rate plus the fix and the VAT. So in April, since again, nag-ingon si RC as si DSOR nga 3 months, preceding months. So in getting the estimated bill for April, ang ato ang gigamit nga data is January until March. So we get the average and then we get the estimated bill for April, which is 93 kilowatt-hour. Next, please. So when did the actual meter reading happen? Kay in the case of Davao del Sur, problema kay uninterrupted man atong serbisyo dere. The LGUs allowed us to operate on a daily basis, so wala mi nakaproblema. In the case of Davao Occidental, we were only given permission to operate our meter reading and distribution of bills in May 2020. So dito na nato nakita ang mga problems nga nasinati sa ato ang mga member consumers dito. So, what are those problems? Next slide, please. So, moni karon ang nakita nato. Number 1 is overestimated billings as against actual consumption. So, unsa may mga example ani? Because again, di ba, si RC nag-ingon nga average 3 months. So, katong mga panahon na malamang ang mga tindahan open pa. So, therefore, ga-consume. Ang mga balay, naata dito gapuyo, malamang ga-consume ang mga residential consumers. The problem is, during SCQ and MECQ, since peculiar mo siya kay nga situation, no, tanang tindahan na nirado. So therefore, in March and April, malamang, kung na may konsumo, gamay na lang gid kaayo. The problem is, ang basis manggod sa estimated billing is ang prior months nga consumption. So mo to nakita nato pag actual reading nato in May, nasubraan dag estimate because katuding panahon na sirado ang mga tindahan. What is another example? na yung mga consumers nato, particularly sa poblacion area, nga during quarantine period, nangadto sila, nanguli sila sa ilahang mga houses na sa bukid. No? Nangadto sila sa ilang mga relatives, dito sila nagstay because they wanted to stay away from the crowd. Daghan tag member consumers nga ingon ana ang nahitabo. So therefore, ang ilang balay walay gikonsumo because wala man sila nagpuyo dito during those period. So makita nato nga ang nahitabo nga problem is not actually because nagpabaya si Dasoreco, but because Dasoreco only followed the guidelines. And those peculiar instances, dili maguto siya covered sa guidelines. Although nahitabo to siya, but the good thing about it is Dasoreco is committed to adjust because we saw that those problems are actually legit problems. So muna katong June, na-correct nato ni siya. And in fact, napay mga additional adjustments karon in July para yun ma-answer tong overestimated billings in Davao Occidental. So maski gugani, wala sila ni adto sa office, nakita man na mo mismo sa metro. Uy, dako ra ang na-estimate nato as against sa na-rehistro sa metro. So automatically, we did the adjustment. Maski pag wala nagreklamo si consumer, maski pag wala siya nag-request, we did all adjustments sa katong mga overestimated billings. Now, we have another problem. Number one is under or low estimated billings as against actual consumption. So kung makita na to, again, since ang basis is historical data raman, preceding 3 months, the problem is, katong mga panahon na atong mga anak, kamo mismo naa sa eskwelahan, ang atong parents naa sa office, gatrabaho, or maybe naa sa farm, nagtrabaho. But during this period, March and April, instructionan ta, our LGUs or national government said, that we should stay at home. And most of us, when we stayed at home, wa magitay laing buhaton, mutanaw TV, magpa-electric fan, magluto, mag-open sa ref, mag-computer, mag-internet, and we do all those things inside the house. And all of those things are consuming electricity. Kaso lang, most of our consumers, dili nila ma-identify to as a factor. Na naaman data sa balay, no? So malamang, mutsaka gid atong consumption. So the problem with Davao Occidental, again, since wala na to na actual reading, base lang sa historical, so during those historical data, wala ta gastay sa balay, and then for March and April, gastay ta sa balay, so naturally na ay spike sa consumption. However, wala na capture because the guideline says, again, historical lang. So mo to pag kami, pag bill na mo, pag reading na mo, dito na ni spike ang consumption. Because ang ato ang metro, cumulative lang man na siya, dili man na siya mo start from zero again, unless mahurot niya ang tanang dials, but generally, magsige ra gyud na siya add. Mao bitaw tong atong gina-compute previous reading, present reading minus previous reading. Kay dili na siya mabalik og zero. Always gina siya ga-add. So, nakita nato tong May, nga katong mga balay, nga nakulangan og estimate during March and April, dito nato na bill sa May. So muna kasagaran ang reklamo dito na sa May, nga nganong dagko kay mong bill sa May. But actually, that May billing is a portion of that billing is gikan patong March and April, which is na underbilled. Because again, ang basis nato is the historical data, which is wala na capture to nga time nga nagastay na ta at home tanan. So later on, I'll be showing you a graph kung unsay pasabot atong over or under estimated billing. So we have listed here some of the factors that may have caused high billing. So ako na-discuss ganiha, katong increased consumption during ECQ and MECQ. So mo ni kasagaran gyud ang reason nga nganong taas ang atong billing. And in fact, this is not only true to the Sureco, dili lang siya true to Davao del Sur, Davao Occidental. Tinuod ni sa tanang electric cooperatives and tanang distribution utilities in the Philippines. So dili lang kita ang namoblema ani, tanan nagproblema because during ECQ and MECQ, gastay tanan sa balay. And normally, what we do inside the house, again, mutanaw tag TV, magpaon tag electric fan, magpaon tag aircon, we open the refrigerator more often, galuto ta, diba? So daghan tag activities inside the house, tungod kay wala ta kagawas. And those activities already consume additional consumption beyond our usual nga ginagamit. Because again, the usual thing that we do is we go outside, di ba? Ang uban gadto og mall, ang uban nasa eskwelahan. But during this period, wala ta kaadto ato mga lugar. We all stayed in the house. And basically, because of staying inside the house, we consumed a lot higher than our usual consumption. So next, we also have this factor, high heat index and temperature that will increase consumption. So this is very scientific. Nagtuo tanong nga, katong January or katong December, 8 hours raman ko mag-aircon. Katong March and April, 8 hours raman pod. Nganong layo magyud kayo ang bill. Pero there is already a factor. Kay ang December and summer is a different season. Si December is a cold month or cooler month as compared to summer, which is a hot month. So init siya nga panahon. So there is a scientific explanation to that. Now when the temperature outside is high, appliances with compressors like air conditioner work harder. So maski pa di ay 8 hours pariha inyo gitay man in toto yun 8 hours ginyo gipadagan December, 8 hours pinyo gipadagan in April or March. The problem is init kaayo tong panahon sa March, April and May. And that alone causes the spike in consumption. Kaya ang characteristic po sa atong air conditioner, once init ang outside nga environment, ang iya pong motor will work harder than it usually does. Because ang iyang characteristic is pabugnawon niya ang iyang environment, no? So therefore, na di factor ana. So dili lang day number of hours ang ato ang i-consider labi na kung naay mga compressor nga appliances ang atong pagaistoryahan. Because gavari po ang iyang consumption sa outside temperature. And finally, one of the factors that increases or causes high billings is the low estimated billing versus high actual consumption. So ako na itong i-explain ganiha, nga since ang atong basis for estimated billing in March and April are your previous month's consumption, so wala na ito na-capture ang spike sa inyong consumption during summer, which is during that time, we use more often the air conditioner, the electric fan, we open usually the refrigerator, no? So dagan gani kay mga jokes in Facebook. I hope nakita po ninyo nga ang mga anak giingnan na sa inahan nga pagpuyo pod ayo sige abri og ref kay halos mahurot na ang pagkaon because generally mao man ang atong characteristic, no? Mangita taw activities inside the house and those are the usual and normal activities we do in the house, no? Mangaon ta, magtan-aw tag TV, magpa-under tag electric fan, no? So mo to ang ga-cost sa high billing because wala nato to na-capture ang beyond normal ninyo nga ginakonsumo. Dito rin nato siya na-capture when we did the actual billing in May. So mo to siyang ga-cost na sa high billing ang anong taas kaayo si May. So I have now here the graphical presentation para ma-appreciate ninyo nga unsa di kaibahan sa estimated o sa actual billing. So ganiha nagpakita ko example katong December, January and February in which ang iyang March nga consumption is 95. Kanang 95 in March is based on estimated billing. Kay gikuha niya ang average gikan sa December up to sa February. Also for April, average gapon na siya since gikuha niya ang average reading from January until March. So mo ni karon ang nahitabo because in March and April, kung makita niyo sa graph, normal naman siya, pariha raman siya og consumption kay average lang magud atong basis. Mo to in May, when we did the actual reading, nakita nato nga there is a spike in your consumption. Kay naka-register man siya sa Metro. So that is the reason why nakita nato nga as compared to March and April and mao pod gini usually ang complaint sa consumer nga ngano mang to previous months 2,000 ra kong bill, ngano mang karong bulana 3,000, ngano 4,000. So mo ada ito actually ang reason because in March and April underbilled ta. Wala nato nakuha ang eksakto nga bill kay nag-estimate ra man ta. So when we say estimate, it is not a perfect estimation. Nagay factors nga pwede mudako, napoy factor nga pwede gamay. So unsa day dapat ang true picture kung na-reading lang unta. So on next slide, so this is actually unta the picture kung na-reading lang unta nato during those period. So kung makita nato in December up to February, parihara na the same. Pero actually in March, dili dito dapat 95 kilowatt hour. So naadi siya dapit sa almost 100 plus kilowatt hour. So makita nato kung na-reading lang unta siya, so na-distribute evenly ang iyahang consumption. Kaya ngano, kung unsa nga bulan niya consumption, dito man unta to mabil. So kung makita nato in May, dili pud unta kay taas, dili kayo taas iyang billing because natama man siya og bill in March and April. So makita na nato ang difference, no? Again, no one is to be blamed because again, this is a peculiar situation and we only followed kung unsa ang guidelines nga gi-issue sa ERC sa atua. So mao na siya, although there were problems, a lot of problems na nasinati ato mga member consumers, but the Soreco is committed to correct, to adjust. So moto gani akong giingon ganiha nga pagka-actual billing namo in May, we did right away the adjustment. And this was reflected in their June billing for the case of Davao Occidental. But for the case of Davao del Sur, dili ta ma-mislead, wala tay estimated billing in Davao del Sur. All we did was actual reading, yun. So kung moreklamong taas ang konsumo, we can always validate, we can always check, kay pwede man nato tanaw ng Metro. Yeah, compare nato sa billing, kaya na may present reading dito. So makita nato nga basis gyud sa billing is always what is registered in the kilowatt-hour meter. Alright, so because all of these problems nga nasinati namo during March, April, May, and until this time, July. So si Soreco wala nagpakabuta or nagpakabungol. We also did our several initiatives. Okay, we know that we value the complaints of our member consumers, and we were also disheartened by the dissatisfaction nga nakuha sa itong member consumer owners, no? So what the Soreco did, we did several initiatives, and one is the provision of dedicated lane at the Soreco offices to cater and answer consumer complaints. So nahitabo ni siya more particularly in Malita, nag-provide ta og additional lane purposely to receive and answer complaints. Here in the Soreco main office, makita po ninyo sa gawas, we also provided a dedicated lane for that purpose para unsa man namo gusto i-imply that the consumers' complaints are valuable and we are committed to answer and to address all those concerns. So dili mi gusto nga ma-left behind ang consumer hanging unsa man gyud akong bill ngano dako man. So that is why we provided a dedicated lane para gyud ma-answer, ma-facilitate and ma-fast track ang requests or complaints sa consumer. So number 2, we added meter readers and inspectors to conduct meter reading inspection to validate kilowatt-hour registration. So in the case of Davao del Sur, gani maski we did the actual reading for the satisfaction of our member consumer owners. Pag naay mo reklamo, amog yung atuon sa field. Ipakita gyud with the consumer para makita pud sa consumer nga actual reading gyud siya. No, that is our way of kanang satisfying our member consumers who are already complaining about their billing. In the case of Davao Occidental, nagdugang ta og mga additional meter readers and inspectors dito para pod mo inspect, mo check. Kay maski nakita na namo na actual reading na namo in May, again, we wanted nga kami mismo first hand ang mo explain, mo pakita, mo justify sa ato ang consumer unsay nahitabo. So far katong mga nag-request nga ipa-check, ipa-inspect, giadtuan to sa ato ang mga inspectors. And they also personally explained to our consumers in Davao Occidental of what happened to the account. Number 3, we also created a team to prepare adjustments of affected consumers of overestimated billing. So ako naman na-discuss ganiya nga naay mga several accounts na overestimated. So what we did here in the Soreco, nag-create dayon mi og team. Once paguman sa reading, nag-create dayon mi og team, and those teams nag-work beyond the normal 8 hours, beyond the normal working days of Monday to Friday. Nagtrabaho mi Saturday, Sunday, nagtrabaho mi until gabi because we wanted nga makorek immediately ang katong nakita na nato nga overestimated billings. And also we created a team dedicated to posting of billing adjustments due to overestimation. So this is a separate group na pod nga once na prepare na sa amo ang adjustment team, na po another group to validate and to post it to the system para posted na, makita na, ma-reflect na siya sa billing sa member consumer and ma-reflect na po siya sa among system whenever a consumer comes to the office. Mangutana, unsa man gyud akong bill, pila naman dira. So makita to siya. So muna nag-create po taog team ato para again ma-fast track, ma-facilitate ang overestimated billings nga nahitabo during ECQ and MECQ. So what are the Soreco other initiatives? So if you are active or if you have liked our Facebook page, sometime in March, April, and May, we posted several information about how an appliances consumes electricity or how much it consumes in a specific period of time and in a specific period number of days. So natagipakita na dito. What is the purpose of that? To educate our member consumer owners nga maging cautious data, maging maging particular, maging attentive ta on how we use and what kind of appliances that we use. Kaya ang specific appliance na siya corresponding nga factors that will increase or that will affect our billing. So kanin siya mismo nga information dissemination is very helpful to all of us para maka-initiate ta og mga saving initiatives on how to save electricity in our home, no? For example, kanang ref nga sige natong abri-abrihan, the more often nga atong abrihan, the more nga siya nga mag-consume og electricity. Sa flat iron, the often that we use flat iron, the more po siya nga mag-consume og electricity as compared kung bultuhon nato o gamit ang pag-iron sa atong clothes. So those are just some of the energy tips that we posted, we disseminated on our FB page para po sa member consumer owner, labi na katong dili walay access to go to the Soreco or maybe to ask somebody, at least mismo sa Facebook page makita nila nga ay there is actually something or there are ways where we can actually save electricity, and by that we will reduce our billing for that specific month. So next, we also did the Soreco CSR kay usahay man god si member consumer owner, no, makita nga sige ra tag bill nga murag ang purpose of the Soreco is just to bill, but actually the distribution of electricity to the most far-flung areas, including ours na nara sa mga major areas in the province, is actually a service in itself, no? Kato mismo mo to existence sa mo ang mo to reason sa mong existence as a distribution utility to serve you with electricity, with a reliable and a safe electricity. So, unsa pa man day laing activities sa Soreco, mao ra ba gyud to yang ginatrabaho, igo ra siya mo serve, igo ra gyud siya mo bill, igo ra gyud siya mangolekta. So, to help consumers, most especially the marginalized residential consumers, the Soreco implemented the following initiatives aimed at helping our member consumer owners. Gani, maski pag dili member consumer owners, we also have several projects nga nakatabang gyapon, maski dili ka member, maski dili ka consumer sa Soreco. Because again, si Soreco is at the heart of Soreco's existence is service. So mo ni nga natay mga CSR activities. And what is the first and foremost highlight activity of Soreco that we did in 2020? So perhaps nakadungog ta ani pero wala kay nato ma-digest, no? So what Soreco did, the board of directors of Soreco passed resolution number 80 series of 2020, which is a resolution adopting the Pantawid Liwanag Corporate Social Responsibility Program, its guidelines and budget for its implementation to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 pandemic and ECQ to the most vulnerable and less fortunate member consumer owners. So unsa din nga program? So this actually is a program to help all marginalized residential consumers, atong klaro na residential consumers of Soreco, consuming 30 kilowatt-hour and below. Kato silang ginatawag nga lifeliners or the marginalized consumers of Soreco. So unsa gibuhat ni Soreco? For the period of March and April, na-identify naman gud nato no nga walay sector nga dili apektado sa COVID-19. Most especially ang mga marginalized nato nga mga kauban. They are the most affected, the most vulnerable affected personalities because of this COVID-19. So what Soreco did is gibayaran, gi-pay off sa Soreco ang ilahang bill for March and April. Pasabot, kung ni-bill sila og 5 pesos, ni-bill sila 10 pesos, gibayaran to tanan sa Soreco. Because Soreco wanted to extend the help particularly to this sector. Because again, sila ang most affected na sector in the society because of this COVID-19. So what is the effect of that program? In effect, si Dasoreco naka-allocate o gibayaran niya ang bills sa 102,680 consumers of Dasoreco for the month of March and April 2020. The total amount is 8,300,000. So nahitabo ato, wala na gid sila kailangan bayaran for March and April nga billing. Gani kung naman tay uban consumers nga very prompt ni bayad sila, maski ilang gibayaran amo gyapon gipasok tong equivalent nga amount. Ang nahitabo ato nahimo to nilang advance payment. Because again, wala mi nag-discriminate. Tanan nga marginalized residential consumers who belong to the lifeline category were given this lifeline or this Pantawid Liwanag program. So gibayaran ni Dasoreco to in full. So makita nato no, grabe ang effect sa program sa Dasoreco. To date we have 169,000 billed consumers. So almost one-third of that. One-third, so mga 51,000 gibayaran ni Dasoreco, giabagan ni Dasoreco, because Dasoreco feels that in one way or another, it has to help its member consumer owners. And this is one of the best help that Dasoreco has extended to its member consumers during those pandemic. So kanusa man ni siya na-post, katong June 2020, na-post ni siya. So malamang pag-receive ninyo sa inyong billings, katong mga qualified, nakita na nila nga, uy, tinuod yun di ay. Kaya gibayaran ni Dasoreco ang bill for March and April. Okay? Next, we also have several corporate social responsibilities. Kaya again, we wanted to highlight that the existence of Dasoreco is not just to bill you, to disconnect you, to read you, or whatsoever kanang any financial related things. No? At the core of Dasoreco's existence is again, service. So muna, in times of mga calamities, in times of crisis, Dasoreco is always there. And in fact, we are proud that we are one of the first to offer help. Not only diri sa ato, maskig sa ubang mga lugar nga affected po sa mga baha. So we have here several activities that we did during those calamities and earthquakes, crises. One is the relief operation in coordination and cooperation with various EC, allied organizations, party list, groups, and other EC Network Foundation. We have powering our MCO's hope by powering the evacuation sites through generator sets. So at the time nga naglinog, so most of evacuation areas, walay mga kuryente, si Dasoreco right there and there ni adto nagpadala og mga gensets, nagpataod og mga light stations, nagpataod og mga charging stations so that we can serve those who were affected, those who were evacuated at the time of earthquake. Then during the series of earthquake, we distributed goods and tarpaulins as temporary shelter. Next slide. We also, on the onset of COVID-19, Dasoreco immediately distributed PPEs like face masks, sanitizers, alcohols, cover-all bodysuits, and many other barangays, municipal COVID centers, hospitals, and many others. So, dayon nga nagpabuhat si Dasoreco og mga mask, nag-order og mga sanitizing kits so that we can distribute them at the time of pandemic, at the onset of the pandemic COVID-19, nakahatag dayon ta sa ato mga frontliners og mga PPEs and mga sanitizing agents. Next is the set of amplifiers, sound speakers were turned over to the border quarantine lockdown areas entering and exiting the city of Digos. So makita nato nga ang way of service sa Dasoreco is not only kung unsa tong iyahang ginakater, which is to consume electricity, but rather iyang ginatanaw at during those times of crisis and during those times of calamities, unsay basic necessity, unsay basic nga kinahanglunon sa isa ka area. And for one, sa mga border stations, mga border control stations, immediately si Dasoreco nag-provide og mga amplifiers to help for the usage of the frontliners nga ga-control sa mga border stations. We also did relief assistance through goods were also distributed to our media partners as Pantawid Impormasyon and the female inmates at the BJMP Digos District along with the celebration of the Mother's Day. So kanang daghang groups, daghang mga individuals ang natagaan og assistance sa Dasoreco. Because again, holistic ang pag-approach sa Dasoreco, not only to a specific group, but we wanted that diversified ang amuang help nga matabang to any group that needs Dasoreco's help. Next, during the ways to neck-deep flood on the night of June 28, so medyo nag-trending ganin siya, in fact, kay nag-flooding diri sa Digos last June 28, Dasoreco promptly responded to numerous concerns on power outages. Immediately on the following day, Dasoreco initiated giving temporary relief goods, bedding, used clothing, home essentials, and many other ready-to-eat food packs were distributed to affected consumers to ease devastation brought by the food. So, immediately, katong pagkahitabo sa Dicos na flooding last June 28, the day after that, automatic na may team nga gi-create, na team nga nag-activate to prepare all those relief packs. And then on that very day, nahatag yudayon nato ang mga packs sa ato ang mga nanginahanglan nga consumers. And again, dili lang siya consumers, maski paganig dili mga member consumers, for as long as part sila sa affected area, ga-reach out si Dasoreco sa ilaha. And I just also would like to highlight na kani siya nga initiative, dili lang siya purely cooperative or Dasoreco initiated nga approach or nga extent of help, no? Maski mga empleyado sa Dasoreco nag-provide, naghatag og mga used clothing, nag-provide og mga in-kind nga goods para pod ikatabang sa mga nanginahanglan during those calamities. So I'm showing you now some of the pictures during those relief operations. Next, this one is during earthquake. Makita na to mga tents, mga relief goods nga na-receive sa ato ang mga affected nga mga kaigsuunan. Particularly dito sa Magsaysay, dagantag natabangan dito in Kiblawan, in Matanao. So these are, makita ninyo, daghan-daghan yun ang na-prepare na itong relief goods during the series of earthquakes. Napotay genset nga gi-provide. And then this is during the COVID-19 pandemic, naghatag ta og mga PPEs. This one was taken at Davao del Sur Provincial Hospital, naghatag tag mga body suits, mga face masks, mga alcohol ato gihatag sa ilaha. And also this mga relief goods and mga PPEs gihapon sa ato mga LGUs and all other frontliners. So si Dasoreco immediately nag-provide ana. And katong during flooding, mao ni siya mga relief goods nga ato ang na-provide pod sa ato ang mga kaigsunan nga affected during flood. Alright, so finally, aside from those initiatives that I have already shown you a while ago in the program, the Liwanag Pantawig program nga gibuhat sa Dasoreco, what are the other initiatives nga gibuhat sa Dasoreco? So one is the extension of due date. Malamang wala dili kay ta aware ani, but in fact, si Dasoreco nag-extend sa due date sa tanan natong mga accounts during ECQ and MECQ to 30 days. Diba? Gani, the normal is only 9 days from receipt of bill, ang ato ang bill mag-due 9 days, gikan sa atong pagdawat. But during those period, gi-extend ni Dasoreco into 30 days because again, Dasoreco wanted to help our member consumer owners. Second, no disconnection. So gikan tong March until this day, wala gihapon ta ga-disconnect og delinquent nga mga member consumer owners. Because again, we feel that at this time, we are still affected financially, emotionally, physically by this COVID-19 pandemic. So as a proactive response of the Dasoreco, wala siya nagapahigayon karon og disconnection until further notice. Kay gusto ni Dasoreco in a way makahelp, makatabang. But still, gani, maski wala mi ga-disconnect, amo gyapon gina-encourage ang ato mga member consumer owners nga mobayad. Ngano man? Because our power supplier, our generators, our transmission company doesn't provide or did not extend any payment extension to Dasoreco. So unsa may pasabot? During March, during April, si Dasoreco gabayad gyapon sa power supplier. And basically, asa man makuha si Dasoreco og pambayad sa power supplier? Of course, gikan pod sa bayad sa ato mga member consumer owners. So maski wala mi ga-disconnect, we always encourage, we always tell our member consumer owners na kung natay ginagmay, atong ibayad. Because si Dasoreco, wala po siya gitagaag payment extension sa mga power suppliers. So very important kay ni Dasoreco na makabayad siya sa iyahang monthly nga dues sa iyahang mga power supplier o sa transmission company. So with that, I'll end my presentation. Medyo taas-taas, no? Yes, murag almost 1 hour good. And can we questions? Can we?
Thank you so much, Sir Louie, for that very informative presentation. I do hope na sulod na sa ako ang una, bisan pag nautuhan